Okay, everybody, welcome to the Straight Talk Podcast with Johnny Mo. I am Johnny Mo, retired Air Force C-130 flight engineer, son, father, husband, brother, uncle, alcoholic, 12 years sober, suicide survivor, 4 years on that one. And this podcast is my therapy. I like to talk to people, increase my network, and get people help where I think I can help them. I hope to raise awareness of veteran suicide and other struggles that we have when transitioning out of the military. Today's guest is a little different for the Johnny Mo podcast. And I am outside of my comfort zone a little bit on this one. So you guys will have to bear with me, but I think today's guest is going to be incredible. Her story is amazing. It is a very hard one to listen to. There will be discussions of domestic abuse, violence, rape, sodomy, alcohol, and drug use. There will be some hard topics discussed about feelings of the military failing this individual, the programs that were available at that time failing this person. I do not condone any of the things that happened to her, and I'm sure she won't either. What we are going to focus on is the struggle that she had, the struggle that she endures, and how she coped, came out of it, and has now become a better person and has dedicated her life to assisting other military families in her area. There are also new programs available that have just come out in the last 2 years that she will speak on. She is a former Marine wife, a domestic abuse survivor. She is president of the Charlotte, North Carolina Blue Star chapter. She is a published author of A Marine's Wife, A Battered Life, Dress Bruise. There's the book right there. It's available on Amazon. And she likes to say, which cracks me up, she likes to say she went from a GED to a PhD, all while getting her ass beat. So please welcome Fostoria Pierson. Fossy, thank you for being here. This is going to be a good one. I think there's going to be a lot of people that can relate to this, and hopefully we can get them.
Yes, and thank you for having me, Johnny.
No, thank you for being here, sweetheart. So in the book, I read your book. It just came out this year. I couldn't put it down. I read it in about 2.5 hours. You were born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, and you married very young, 16, I believe it was, correct?
Yes, it was. I married young.
Yeah, and that was 1975,
75. Yes.
75.
Mm-hmm.
So Vietnam had just ended. Your husband was headed off to basic training, correct?
Yes, at Parris Island.
Parris Island. So tell me how that went, being 16 in Cincinnati in 1975, post-Vietnam. Tell me how that life went for you.
Well, actually, like I said, I married young, and I married into the Marine Corps family. But during that time, my husband was at boot camp. I had already had one child before I had gotten married. And then another little boy came along. So I was this young mother and still living with my parents and my 11 other siblings. So we had a house full of folk. And it was hard because, him being in boot camp in Parris Island, there was no way to communicate with him or, let him know about the struggles that I was having at home. Right. With already 2 kids and, a house full of other siblings. And
right, because you didn't have a small family, right? I mean, you had
and his family wasn't that supportive. So honestly, yeah.
Right. And back then, in 1975, it wasn't like you could, hop on Facebook and shoot him a message or pick up a cell phone or anything like that. You were
Oh,
restricted to phone calls and certain days for mail and things like that. So it was probably a struggle back at home. When did you finally get to meet up with him and start living with him in the Marine Corps?
my when he had a birthday party and my girlfriend and I, we were just walking along and he invited us to his birthday party. So we decided to go and one thing led to another. And then after that, he and I start dating. And once I start dating him, you know, that's when the abuse started. And I remember an incident. I, and his sister, we went shopping, and another young man just glared at me, and my husband at the time, he became very jealous and angry, and he slapped me. And I'm thinking, oh, a slap here and there, that's okay. I didn't think of it as abuse. Hey, I was 16 years old. You
Right. And
know,
how old was he?
he was 18.
Okay.
Yes, he was 18. Yes. And I'm like, okay. So one slap. And so we continued to date. And then when he was released from boot camp, then his first duty station was Camp Lejeune.
Okay.
Yes.
And you met him, you moved over there then?
Yes, yes. We went to Camp Lejeune, and I had dropped out of high school. So I proceeded to start working on my GED.
Now,
Yeah.
did you get that GED right away or?
No, I didn't, because in the midst of trying to get my GED, there was abuse. And it was hard. And, it was either the abuse or, don't go to school. You don't need to finish your degree. And even if I attempted to, it would be a slap or a punch or whatever. But again, I didn't think anything of it. It's like, oh, okay. I guess that's just a part of being married.
Yeah.
Again, who am I? I'm 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Being 16, 17, down in Camp Lejeune, away from the family, you don't have the resources that you have now for information or family connectivity or anything like that. So you're kind of on your own there, and you're involved with essentially strictly other military spouses, correct? I mean, there's not a lot else that you're going to go do or see, right?
Yes, there were other Marine spouses, and you have to understand that during that era, there were other spouses, and I'm going to say wives, because during that era, the majority of the spouses were wives.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of female Marines back then.
No, it wasn't. And the majority of them were going through the same thing I was going through, the physical abuse, the emotional abuse.
So did you all talk about it and just assume that it was normal, or?
It was normal. It was a normality around us, because as I stated, it was always, don't go to the command. Let me just back up. When I married my Marine husband, I married him because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's my security blanket.
Right.
This is a man that I love. This is a man that loves me. But never in my wildest dreams did I think that I had to fight this man. Never did I think that the one that I thought was here to protect me, like he protected his country.
Right. You don't think about that.
Yes.
And you're not a big woman. You're short in stature, correct?
Well, during that time, yes, I was probably about 5'5". I'm 5'8" now.
And he was not a small man.
No, by no means. No, not a small man at all.
Right. So did you feel intimidated, like you just had to take it, or again, just being young and not knowing?
Well, the truth is, being young, already a mother, already a wife, what could I do? I
Wow.
didn't really know anyone outside of the Marine spouses. And if we're all experiencing the same thing and being told the same thing, don't go to my command, don't ruin my career, what could
Right.
we do?
Yeah. If you're all being told the same thing, I guess with nobody else saying anything was wrong, how would you know any different? Right.
Yes, that's true. And then with my family being away in Cincinnati, Ohio, and there was really no support. I mean, during that time, we didn't have the family advocacy programs that they have now. We didn't
Right.
have the outreach programs that they have now. And as you stated earlier, we didn't have the Google or the cell phones that we could
Right.
just shoot a quick text, and
Right.
say, hey, somebody, I'm getting my ass beat,
Yeah. It doesn't work like it didn't work like that
No, it
back
didn't
then,
work like that.
No, it
No,
was a
not at
lot
all.
of turn a blind eye.
Yes.
Whereas nowadays, if you hear somebody getting their ass beat next door, most of us are going to walk next door and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Back then, it was that's just the way it is. That's discipline. That's a kid. That's whatever. You didn't involve yourself in it. You didn't get involved in it. You stayed out of it. That was their business. You had 3 kids with him? Is that correct?
No, we have
5
5 children.
children. That's right. I'm
Yes, we
sorry.
have 3 young men and twin daughters, and they're all grown.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
But you guys stayed at Lejeune for a while, correct? You were
We
always
stayed there for 3 years.
3 years, and then where did
Yes.
you go?
And then from there we went to El Toro.
Which is
Um,
where?
El Toro, I'm sorry, El Toro, California,
California.
at the
Okay.
Marine Corps Air Station before Brack closed it. I believe we was there probably 3, 4 years before Brack closed it. And but that was one of the most horrible times for me because that's when the abuse really started.
That's when it changed.
And that's when it changed.
And
That's when it changed.
what had it been before, and what did it change to?
Well, as I stated before, I thought a slap, you know, and a little punch here or a little kick there. I thought it was normal. Uh, but once we moved and the abuse continued, I had gone through some of the most painful, the most embarrassing abuse that I feel that any mother or any spouse or anyone could ever endure.
Right.
And especially during the time when he had gotten stationed, he was going to Okinawa, Japan.
Hmm.
I was so happy because
I
I
remember.
knew while he was gone, I didn't have to go through the abuse. So
Right.
while he, in the midst of him getting ready to, pack up and go to Japan, he had a few days off, and we lived with his parents. We lived with his mother and grandmother, and brother and sister, and it was I want to say it was a 4 story. Yeah, it was a 4 story house, and we always stayed in the attic. And that is somewhere of my most painful torture and sodomizing took place.
Yeah, you talk about that quite in depth in your book, and we don't have to
Yes.
get into that here. I understand it's a rough, traumatic time and very difficult. If you want to hear about it, I recommend you read the book, a Marine's Wife, Battered Life, Dress Bruise. Um, while he was in Okinawa, how long was he gone?
He was gone almost a year.
Okay. And then
Yes.
did you think about leaving then? Did you
I
try to leave? Did you?
Well, I did. I thought about leaving, but again, I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the only place that I could go was in between my parents' home or his parents' home, and there was really nowhere else to go.
So what you
But
thought in your head, and excuse me for interrupting, but in your head, you thought he's going to find me no matter where I go. If I go to mom's or I go to his mom's, he's going to know where I'm at. And you didn't
oh
think he could
yes,
get
most
away.
definitely. Yeah, most definitely. Because he knew I didn't have anywhere else to go but
Right.
right there in Ohio and in between my parents and his. And he knew that I would actually end up at my parents' home because of the relationship or lack of relationship that he and his mother had. Yeah, but
How
those were the happiest moments when he was gone because I did not have to worry about getting tortured, getting raped, getting sodomized. And though that was the happiest 10, 11, 12 months of my life.
how did you cope with all this back then? What did you do?
Alcohol. I started drinking alcohol. I mean, I got married at 16. When the severe abuse started, it was probably 17. My coping mechanism, as I speak of in my book, was alcohol. I started off with just beer. And I knew when he came home that I would have to at least have drank 2 to 3 beers uh, just to cope with the abuse. But but then the beer turned into liquor, and I'm talking
Right.
about hard liquor,
Right.
you know, and that was my coping mechanism for beer, and I remember drinking 151 rum
Oh yeah.
and with a beer back, just to get over the pain or just to numb my mind and my body from all the abuse. Um, so I honestly have to say, during all the years that I was being abused, alcohol was my coping mechanism.
And
And
a lot of us turn to alcohol to cope with life.
yes,
And I mean, I don't think you're going to recommend it. You're not going to say, hey, go drink a fifth and everything will be fine. I don't think any of us would say that alcohol is definitely the answer to anything, but that's what you used to get yourself through back then. And, just to remind everyone, you were still very young when he went to Okinawa. You were 21 or 22 at that time, right?
yes, I was very young.
And you had all 5 of the kids?
I yes, and during the different times, and I used to think to myself, wow, in between the babies came the beatings. Um, because I didn't have a choice in that matter. And
Right.
I knew as, the day went on, even when he came home from Okinawa, Japan, and I just knew my life and what I was getting ready to go through. Um, and it was something again that no one should have ever endured, especially this man being my husband.
Right.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute, again, you're supposed to protect me. You're supposed to love me. I didn't get married for this. And I just, I, I mean, it was such a hard time. It really was.
At any point, did you ever think that, um, and forgive me for being blunt, did you ever think that you were deserving of these? Did you lower your own self-esteem to say, well, maybe I did mess up? And the reason I bring that up is, like I told you, I have no experience with this. I have none. When we talked earlier today, I told you I'm outside of my comfort zone and I'm a little bit nervous. I don't know where we want to go with this or how we want to do it. So forgive me uh, in my ignorance. Um, but you and I have talked several times. I've read the book, and did you ever think that this is just the way it's going to be, and I'm not good enough to get anything better? Did you ever think of that way?
All the time. And there was no self-esteem. There was no self-worth because whatever I had when I married him at a young age, he beat it out of me. So self-esteem, no way. And yes, I thought just as many women do that are being abused by their husbands, they feel as though it's my fault.
Right.
What could I do better? What could I have done better? I mean, as I speak of in my book, an incident, I was cooking food and he
Yeah.
came home and he didn't want what I was cooking. He punched the hell out of me. And I'm thinking, okay, well, it's my fault. Maybe I should have called and asked him, what did he want to eat, instead of me trying to be a wife, just think,
Right.
hey, you know what? This is probably, I think this is a good meal. But evidently it wasn't. So,
What
because I got beat for it.
what would you what would you say to your 22-year-old self now, having gone through everything now, 40 years later and educated as you are, but what would you say to that young 22, or even that 16-year-old who was slapped the first time? What would you say to her?
Get out. That's why in my book, in each chapter, I ended with hashtag get out.
Mm-hmm.
Because like me, I didn't know 15, 16, and 17-year-olds in my era around 75 and year 75 and 76 are
Mm-hmm.
different than the 15, 16, 17-year-old spouses now.
Oh
I
yeah.
say get out. Yes, because that one slap or that one punch or that one kick is not going to be the first, and it's not going to be the last. So if your spouse has any tendencies of being physical or psychological abusive to you, please get out.
And this was not, I mean, he didn't just do this when he was drunk. He didn't just do this after a rough day at work. This was at the drop of a hat, the wrong dinner, the wrong clothes, the improper makeup, whatever. Right. I mean, this wasn't a situational thing. This was almost daily, correct?
Well, as I put in my book, I got beat every day that ended in Y. So you figure it out. And you're right, it didn't have to be when he was drunk. Um, when we left the Marine Corps ball that night, he wasn't drunk because I didn't see him drink anything unless he went behind the door
Sure.
or
Right.
but and when we left the Marine Corps ball, he became very jealous because he thought the sergeant major and I had something going on. I don't know. And when we got out there, and she tricked me,
Yeah.
and and that it didn't matter, alcohol or not. However, the majority of the beatings were when he was drunk, when he had consumed alcohol the morning that he woke up to go to work. And I couldn't understand. I'm like, oh my God, he's a functional drunk Marine. I mean, could go to work, his MOS 3537
Which is
and work
what was that? What do you work at?
a motor T.
Motor T.
It's funny, I still remember his
Yeah.
MOS.
Well, I don't think any of us ever forget our numbers or MLS. None of us do.
Yeah, so, and I mean, go to work functional and be fine, you
But
know. And then what little did they know that when he came home, he was beating the hell out of his wife. Yes.
you talk about leaving the Marine Corps ball and he tripped you, leaving the ball. And I picture an NCO club or something like that where you're walking out and this is, in front of other people that are leaving and nothing gets said, nothing gets done. Nobody says a word to him. And, you talk about him being jealous over the sergeant major. Had you tried to raise any concerns or um, voice, voice the abuse to his command or his sergeant or anybody like that? Had you ever tried?
I did. I would call, speak to the first sergeant, and he would always say, well, I would speak to whatever his rank was at the time, Corporal Booker. And I don't know if in the conversation he just incited him to abuse more, because basically that's what's happened. And then this is why we're always told, don't go to my command. And I remember when I was working in one of the housing offices and I went there and my body was just sore from being beat. And I had mentioned to my one of my managers, and she said, Fossy, is he at it again? I said, yes. And she stood there and she said, you call his command. And I called his command. And honestly, when I called his command, this is what the sergeant said on the other end. Because I told him, I said, hey, I want to report that my husband just beat me up. He beat me up last night and he beat me up before I came to work this morning. And I need for the Marine Corps to do something. And the sergeant said to me, well, Miss Booker, if the Marine Corps wanted, and he had this country talking voice, if the Marine Corps wanted Corporal Booker to have a wife, then we would have put you in. Just see that click. Oh my God, to this day, I wish I could. Oh, I wish I could remember who he was.
That's
And so yes, there were numerous times that I have called his command. There are numerous times that I have begged him, literally begged him, no more beatings, but it didn't matter because again, calling the command, and this is why the beatings got worse. And since you have read my book, and let me just say this, I interviewed 4 other Marine wives in my book.
Yes, you did. And their stories are in the back.
Yes, their stories are in my book.
Mhm.
And one of the wives, all her husband would do was choke her. And she didn't think it was abuse. And I had to explain to her that abuse is abuse. We had no one to go to. She had called each one of the spouses that I interviewed said they called their husband's command and nothing was done.
And I just want to remind people too, this was in the 70s and the 80s
Yes,
and in the early 90s.
in the early 90s. Yes, it was.
Yeah, hopefully this doesn't happen today. There are things that are in place now, but back then you had to feel helpless, alone, defeated. I don't know what other words I could use. Terrified, I guess would be a word. You never knew how bad it was going to be. There's a blurb in your book here. I think it's page 64. We talked about earlier. I prayed for my beatings. I prayed this one wouldn't be as bad as the last. That gives me chills. I cannot imagine. I have no idea what you went through other than by reading your book. And I commend you for even being here and talking to me about this, and being willing to share your story and hopefully help others, to get help if they need it. In that time, 70s to the early 90s, late 70s or early 90s, we were dealing with the drawdown from Vietnam. You were dealing with a country that did not approve of that war, that did not approve of the soldiers that were in that war, and did not give those veterans the help that they needed when they came back. Do you think that had more attention been paid to the veterans coming back from Vietnam, that these types of incidents would have gotten more attention and maybe more could have been done back then?
Yes, I do. And in my book, I do recommend the book When War Comes Home. But because it does outline a lot of the abuse that spouses endure when they're, when the service member comes home. And again, during that time frame, we didn't have anyone to go to.
No.
We did not have a domestic task force like DOD has now in place.
Right. So go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we did not have the information given to us that it could just pop up on our cell phone,
Right.
Or Google something. We didn't have that. We only had each other.
Now you went to
had the husbands that were abusing us.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, if all the spouses that you're hanging out with are going through the same thing, you think, well, it's just part of the deal. It's part of the life. It's the way that things are supposed to be, and you don't know that there can be anything different. You don't know that it can be better. You had sent me well, let's do this instead. You coped with alcohol, but yet you don't consider yourself an alcoholic. And can you explain why?
I'm not getting beat. I'm not getting raped. I'm not getting tortured. I'm not getting sodomized with a foreign object. That was so I could get through, so I could not feel the hurt and the pain, and for I could continue to be a mother to my children, no matter how much physical or psychological pain is. I had to remember I was a mother. I was a young mother.
Yeah, very young.
My children depended on me, no
And what
matter
were the
how
kids?
much
Where were the
abuse.
kids during all this? You know, did they ever see it? Did they ever say anything? Did they try to stand up for you at all?
No, no, they did not see anything. Not until um, it was one of my sons did mention that he did see an incident, and that was during the time that after I wrote my book and I had to discuss it with my children
Right.
to let them know that the book was being published. And one of my sons did say, "Well, Mom, this is what I remember Dad doing." And I was shocked because the majority of my beatings, they were behind closed doors. And as I stated in one of the chapters of my book is called Saved by the Bell.
Mm-hmm.
I was really saved by the bell by one of my children that came and rung the doorbell. But no matter how drunk I was throughout the day or throughout the week, no matter how sore my body was or how bruised it was, I had children I had to take care of, and I had to do the best that I could with what I had. And I had a sore, achy body and a traumatized mind, but I got out.
You did get out. So let's talk about that. You finally left in 1998 after what, 22 years of marriage?
Yes, I finally divorced him in '98, and once I divorced him, I was like, oh my God, it was just just a dark cloud, just lifted over. But it took a while because again, let me just back up. Women, let me tell you right now, if you are going through the abuse, please get out. I mean, I and I'm surprised right now that I'm not crying. And believe me, I am trying to hold back my tears because when I think about the foreign objects, when I think about my hands being tied with socks or a belt, when I think about me being pushed down and stumped, when I think about each time I hear that term band of brothers, it makes me sick to my stomach. And reason being is that one of my husband's closest friends and his wife and I, four of us, when we went out to the Staff NCO Club, and you talk about band of brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when my husband got drunk and threw me under the table, and he stumped me and he kicked me and he beat me like I was a damn dog. And guess what? His brother, another Marine, was sitting there and
Yeah.
didn't say a word.
Yeah. That's in the book.
Didn't say a word.
That's a horrible experience. I
So I'm
can't fathom.
telling you, intimate partners, please don't stay. I
Don't
don't
stay.
care how many roses they buy you, how many boxes of candy, whatever pretty negligee he buys you. Please get out.
I'm speechless right now. Your strength and ability to relive this and recount this for everybody is amazing. I told you I was out of my comfort zone, and I made these lists to try to keep me involved and to keep going, to stay on topic. And I just have a million questions. And I think where I'd rather go is to compliment you on what you've made yourself since leaving in 1998. Um, your kids were all grown at that time, correct? They were all 16 or above, I believe.
Yes, my twin daughters had just graduated from high school.
And you said that was it. It's time to go. And what was that final straw? What was that final moment like for you when you finally broke free? Did you feel like um a new woman? Did you feel vindicated? Did you feel justified? Did you feel um like this is finally over? Well, I mean, what did you feel like?
Yes, during that time I did, but going through the abuse, I didn't. I didn't think I would make it through. I thought my husband would kill me. And but during 1998, I'm like, Lord, I got out. But then I had to reflect on everything that I did, all the abuse that I went through. And I did it for my children. Someone asked me, and I get these questions several times, why did you stay?
Right.
Why did you stay? And I'm sure if anyone's out there listening and they're being abused, and I'm sure you've heard that question too. Why do you stay?
Right.
I
Oh, yeah, my
stayed.
wife got asked it too when I was drinking all the time. If he pisses you off that bad when he's drunk and he won't change his behavior, why are you staying?
Yes. And again, and and I tell people I was a young Marine wife. I was a mother. I had no, he was my security blanket. I had no education. I was going through a GED. What was I supposed to do? It
Right.
was manipulation. It was control.
Right.
And
Right.
yes,
Mental control, physical control, emotional control. He made you rely on him for everything,
everything,
everything.
everything.
And that kept you there. That kept you staying. Um,
Yes,
but
yes.
finally, once the kids were grown and you left, where did you go?
Well, after I divorced him, I stayed around in California for a while. And then I went from California to Florida. I just felt free
Right.
because I knew when I went home, I could cook what I wanted to cook. And I didn't have to worry about somebody punching me in the face.
Right.
I didn't have to worry about, I could go in my bedroom and go to sleep and didn't have to worry about being raped or being sodomized with a foreign object. I could come and go as I please and didn't have to worry about when I get home, what type of beating was it
Right.
going to be? And I had to pray, Lord, it's not going to be a beating when I get home because honestly, well, as I put that quote in my book, you know what? I prayed for my beatings because I didn't know, was it just going to be a punch, a slap, beat with belts, torture, or sodomized? And I prayed for my beatings. Yes, I did. And I was so glad when I finally got out that,
Um,
Lord, I was free.
if you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see her facial expression just changed because we went from talking about the 20 years of abuse to the time when she broke free, and she is grinning and smiling from ear to ear, and it is absolutely beautiful. Um, did you have um, any PTS, any anxiety, depression, any nightmares, any, social situations that made you uncomfortable after you left? Or did you finally, once you broke free, did you turn the corner and boom, everything was fine? Which I already know the answer to this, but I want to hear you say it.
No, everything wasn't fine. I went through counseling um, for years
Right.
um, after the abuse.
Well, in your book, you say that the first time you said it out loud, was in 2005. So 7 years after your divorce is when you finally spoke out. Can you talk about that situation for a minute?
Yeah, I was at church. We were in a women's group, and I was able to speak about it. I was finally able to speak about my abuse and what I was going through.
How did that
And
feel?
the women just listened in amazement. And and that did give me some sense of relief. It really did. And little did I know that it was 8 to 10 of us at the table. And when I start talking about me being abused, other women spoke up as well, and they were being abused also. But I had to get that off my heart. I had to get it off my chest because I was suffering with anxiety. I was suffering with depression. I I felt like all those years I deserved it. I mean, why not? I stayed. So if I
Right.
stayed, then in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, I deserve it.
And that is not the case at all. No woman or spouse deserves to go through what you went through for anything. There's nothing ever so egregious that you need to suffer what Fossey suffered. Um, After this 2005 church group meeting, um, what did it lead to? That 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 release, that finally bringing it out of yourself into the open for others to hear? What did that do for you? Did you feel like you turned a corner? Did therapy all of a sudden change to be more of looking forward to it? Did you start talking out more? Did you start to write the book right away? Tell me about that.
Well, it did. Like I said, I started counseling a couple of years later. And it's funny, well, not how funny, but while I was in counseling, he called me and he said, Fossey, I'm calling to say, I apologize. I am so sorry. Will you forgive me? And I said, you know what? I have forgiven you a long time ago. I didn't forgive you for you. I forgave you for me. I had to go on with my life. I still had young children. I still had me because when we're married, especially women, we lose our identities. I had to get my identity back
Oh,
because I
yeah, I
was
agree.
only addressed as this is my mom, or back in the day, they used to say, oh, this is my old lady,
Mm-hmm.
So once I got free of that, it was like, I have to work on me. I have to work on my identity. I have a name. I have a first and a last name.
Right.
And it was so funny because when I started saying it to myself, I'm like, oh, wow, you actually do have an identity because it's stripped from you.
I
It's
think that's a an excellent point that you bring up there, where you had to find yourself. You had to work on yourself to know that you were worthy of yourself. You had to love yourself, and you didn't forgive. Um, you forgave him a long time ago. You had to forgive yourself. Uh, Many times, um, victims or addicts, we are harder on ourselves than we are others, and we hold ourselves more to a stricter protocol, a stricter regimen, I guess, where we are much harder on us than others are on us. And for you to say that I had to forgive myself and to figure out myself is something I think people need to hear and understand, that when you are out, now you have to work on you first, or you are no good for anybody else. So for you to be able to admit that freely now is wonderful. Obviously, it wasn't overnight. It's been what, 22 years since you left. It's been 15 years since you first brought it up at the church group. So kudos to you on that one.
well, and like I said, it was hard because we lose our identities. But I someone read my book probably about a month ago, and she called and asked me, oh my God, how do you still support the veterans and the Marines and just the military in general. She said, everything that your husband did to you, oh my God, I would hate them. Every branch, she said, especially the Marine Corps. I said, honey, let me tell you something. I said, first of all, he was an individual when he was doing that.
Right.
I said, he chose that behavior.
Right.
It wasn't the military's fault. It wasn't these veterans' fault. It was his fault.
Correct.
Because he chose that. He chose to behave that way. I say, I hold him accountable. I said, even though I have forgiven him, and believe me, it took a lot,
Oh, I bet.
but I have forgiven him. I said, but I hold him accountable, and I still hold the Marine Corps accountable.
I agree.
Because they knew what was going on. They knew we were being abused. Physically, psychologically, they knew it. And they did nothing to support us. They did nothing to help us. And you asked, what about the psychological? You know, what am I going through right now? I went through the counseling, but for years, because all of my beatings took place in my bedroom in a locked door. Oh my God, I had a fear when I went to bed. I had to check my doorknob 10, 15 times to make sure it was locked.
Yeah,
because
I believe
I was afraid then. You know what? Is he coming in?
Right.
Now, and this is apart from, like I said, I felt free. I did. I felt free once I divorced him and everything. But you have to understand, you can't run away from your psychological mind. You can't run away from your conscious. And now that did. I mean, I had problems with that. I had, flashbacks. Again, sometimes I couldn't even sleep because I was so busy making sure my door was locked.
Right. Right. Well, you
And-
talked in your book too, where even when you were married to him, that you would check the door, 2 and 3 times, and he would still come in. You talk about that. So that's again, I'm speechless on this, but I can relate to the nightmares, the anxiety, the checking, the up nights thinking, the having to take care of yourself and love yourself. I can relate to that kind of stuff. You had a good transition there for me, and I forgot it just now, but I think it had to do with the woman asking you, how can you still support the military? You are actually a chapter president for the Blue Star Moms in Charlotte, North Carolina, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
You are a Marine mom too, aren't you?
Yeah. My son's in the Army.
The Army. You are an Army mom.
Yes, I'm an Army mom, and that qualifies me to be a Blue Star mother. Blue Star
Absolutely,
mothers
it does.
Yeah, it has been around since 1946, and we're mothers to have children that are currently serving in the military or have served in the past. And our mission is to support our veterans and our military, which we do. We're very patriotic, and in spite of my beatings from being around the military, I still love my military and I still support them 110%. And I don't hold any of them at fault, none of them. Just my ex-husband and the Marine Corps.
And that's because, like you said, he was one individual. He chose to do what he did. The Marine Corps didn't make him do it. The Marine Corps didn't force him to do it. He did it on his own. And back then, again, we didn't have programs. We didn't have the education that we have now. We didn't have these kind of resources available to us. As a Blue Star mom, you guys support the moms and the families of the veterans. Can you tell me some of the things that you guys do down there in Charlotte as a Blue Star chapter? What do you guys do?
Well, what we do is we take care of their humanitarian needs. If they need furniture, matter of fact, we have 2 storages with furniture in it. Wow. We'll help them with utilities. We will help them with food. Around the holidays, just say for Thanksgiving and Christmas, we put together so many food, turkey baskets for the families. We will support them in their events. If they're having any type of a parade, Veterans Day parade, we will support them. any of the events, and of course last year COVID,
Right. That had to be
that put
tough.
everything aside. Everything was virtual, but we support the perk arts here. We get involved with the VFWs and whatever they need us to volunteer and help them with. That's what we do.
You've
And
actually made contact with Albert Wooden down in I always forget where he's at, but Save 22's president. You asked if we could put you in touch with him, so you had an outreach for the Save 22 for our outreach too. So you had to build your network down there to assist veterans and families of veterans who may be struggling with suicide or PTS, transitioning to civilian life. So, our paths have crossed, and now we've, doubled our network through each other on how we can help veterans as well. And I commend you for that too. Thank you very much for reaching out and including Save 22 in your Blue Star chapter down there. I want to get to one more thing. And then I actually have to run. I got to get my son over to school real quick, but you sent me an article from August 9th of 2018, just to show that there was some change recently. And from the Military Times article, August 9th of 2018, it says, for the first time, domestic violence will be a crime under military law. Domestic violence will officially become a separate crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, when President Donald Trump signs the Annual Defense Authorization Act into law next week. This was 2018. Military officials have prosecuted such crimes in the past, but under more general justice categories such as assault. They carry severe penalties, including jail time and dismissal from the armed forces. But analysts say that doesn't always convey the seriousness of the offense. So as of 2018, domestic violence was actually chargeable under the UCMJ, and it had never been before. Do you see that as a step in the right direction to addressing the concern of domestic violence in the military?
yes and no. I think they would be going in the right direction if they made us whole. And when I say make us whole, for the spouses that endured all the psychological and physical abuse, I think the military needs to make us whole. And for the ones that, my spouse, hold him accountable for this assault. Yeah, this bill 2018, but what about for the bill in 1975 and 76 and up through 1993 when we were getting our asses beat?
Right. And just to be clear, to refresh everyone, he was never brought up on any charges or
None.
ever disciplined at all, correct?
None. No, the Marine Corps allowed it. Yes, he was never brought up on any charges. So make us whole. And again, I thank God that these spouses now, that they finally recognize that this is abuse. This is nothing that you just sweep under the rug. Start holding these men accountable for abusing their wives. Start holding the wives accountable for abusing their husband, because
Right.
it is both ways now.
Yes, there it is. And you actually have statistics in your book that speak to that. I was just looking for it and I can't do it because I'm under pressure, and I don't work as well under pressure as I used to. 80, here it is. In 2017, 87% of military spouse respondents did not report their physical abuse, citing two top reasons for not reporting. They felt it was not a big deal, and they did not want to hurt their partner's career. And that was out of the Blue Star Family Survey on Domestic Violence in 2017. There's also some stats in here that are absolutely mind-blowing. 66% of cases identified female victims in domestic violence in military communities. 62% of the abusers were on active duty military. You did a lot of research on this book, and it took a lot of heart and soul and guts. I'll just put it plainly, guts, for you to put this out here. It took you 10 years to write. And that was not out of time or effort. It was because you wrote it for you, and it was not written. Where did I make? You just told me that note. You
Yeah,
did not write this book out of vengeance.
yes, yes. I
Wow.
had to write it from the experience and what I had went through, and that's why I focused on that one chapter 17, custom fit dress.
Yes. Would you like to? Fozzie asked if she could read this towards the end, and I think this is a good time. Chapter 17 of her book is "You Wore It Well." It's custom fit dress. So, Fozzie, go ahead.
And the reason why I named this title, You Wore It Well, because when I told 2 or 3 people that I was abused, I mean, black eyes, broken arms, bruises, sore body. And one lady in particular said, wow, you wore it well. And this was my question to her. How do you wear abuse? With a black eye, with a broken arm? So this is titled You Wore It Well. Please design me a simple custom fit dress with these unique specifications. The collar has to fold up past my forehead to cover my black eyes and the bruises on my face. Let my hair flow down, since hair is a woman's glory. I never thought I would live to tell my story. The sleeves must be long enough to cover the bruises on my arms. I want my hands and fingers to be exposed because one day God might bless me with a Boaz to put a ring on my finger. The dress has to be long enough so no one will see the bruises on my legs or the sores on my knees from crawling away. I want my feet to show to remind me that God allowed me to walk away. Don't forget the 2 holes for my eyes because I still need to see the footprints to my destiny to which God is bringing me. Don't forget the 2 holes for my ears so I can hear God's voice telling me, I never left you, nor will I forsake you, my child. Leave a hole for my nose so I can breathe the air you tried to beat out of me. Leave an opening for my mouth so I can tell women that are still being abused to hashtag get out now. The top open part of the dress will remind me that the abuse that I endured for so many years is over. The dress must have a zipper down the back to remind me that the abuse is behind me now and it has come to an end. The dress must be purple to remind me of God's royalty. It's my favorite color, and the purple bruises that covered my face and body are no longer there. Most importantly, it has to be a size 16. That's when I said I do. And I made it through different levels of abuse for 16 years. If you are a woman and a victim of physical, sexual, psychological, and emotional abuse, this dress is not a one size fit all magnitudes, black eyes, bruises, scars, rape, and a shattered heart are incomparable abuse. You best believe this dress will not be designed with spandex or any adjustments, whereas there will not be any alterations in my life to fit you or another abuser. You wore it well, we wore it well.
Got chills, Foz. That's beautiful. It's sad but true. I guess is the way we put that. Um, and I hope everybody can tune in on YouTube and watch your facial expressions during this entire interview because I saw how you went from so sincere and struggling at the beginning to smiling right now, and your smile is absolutely beautiful. Um, you are a hell of a woman, a fantastic inspiration to many. Um, if you are wanting to get in touch with Fozzie, we have talked, and while she does not wish to put out her information, you can get in touch with her through me at johnnymomedia@gmail.com or find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube and message me there, and I will make sure that she gets her message. If you are struggling, if you are in crisis, you can call the Veterans Crisis Line at 1-800-273-8255 and press 1. Or go to your local emergency room and explain your situation. They will help you. I promise you they will. Fossey, do you have any parting words for anybody right now?
Yes, please listen to me. If you are in a an abusive relationship now. And again, like I said, a slap, a punch, a kick, please get out. Please call 911. Please go to your husband or your spouse's command. Please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They are there to help you. If you have the family advocacy programs that were not available to us, please reach out to them. Please reach out to Military Source One. They have resources, they have people. Listen, please get out, go to your chaplain. Don't suffer with this abuse in silence like so many of us did, because you do have help. Get out now.
Thank you, Fossy. If I could add just one thing to that, remember that it's not your fault. You are the victim. Nothing you could do could ever warrant being abused, beaten, raped, sodomized. I normally like to end very happy, and I will again just say that I am honored to have interviewed you and to have read your book, and I thank you for sharing your story and inspiration with everybody. You can find her book on Amazon, and it is called A Marine's Wife, A Battered Life, Dress Bruise. And I don't know if you can see it, but she's holding back a little squirt of awesomeness out of her eyeballs right now. And I wish I could just wrap my arms around her and give her the biggest damn hug I've ever given anybody. She is an incredible person. I thank her for being here. And I think I'm going to end it with that. So, Fossy, thank you very much.
Thank you as well, and Happy New Year.
Yes, sweetheart. Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you.